And of course, joining me for the Q&A is, again, Agnis Driksna, our CEO, Mark Loader, Chief Program Manager, and Kristjan Piirsalu, Chief Procurement Officer. So we can take questions from a very, very broad range of subjects. And let me start with the most popular one, which hopefully we covered in some detail during our presentations. So what was the biggest challenge during the COVID crisis, and are there any further threats from this pandemic? So maybe, Agni, you want to take that one from a
I can actually start. I think that actually the biggest challenge is to ensure that we are going on, that the project is going forward. So it means that we had to reorganize our work, and not only at RB Rail team or in Baltics, but also to reorganize the work how are we doing with our partners in different countries, including Italy and Spain. I think that from the one point project get a little bit lucky because we are at this design phase, and that allows to work remotely. And that's why we are quite confident that there will not be a significant impact because of the COVID. And as soon as the borders are open and COVID restrictions are lifted, we will be back to the usual.
Is there anything, Mark, as kind of the holder of the Gantt chart, anything you want to add on this?
We're not seeing any impact at this stage in terms of the long-term delivery. Obviously, there are always going to be some short-term impacts when it's more difficult to arrange meetings, but in the larger scale of things, we're not seeing any impact on our ability to deliver at this stage.
Okay. Continuing on this, again, in view of the different challenges, a question from Gediminas. How do you complete an almost 1,000 kilometers of electrified railway, a dozen of stations, several depots within 5 years, and within 5, or in our case, 6 billion euros? So, Kristjan, you want to shoot off on that one? Maybe from a procurement perspective?
Yes, thank you, Kaspars, for this question. And I think it's indeed a challenge, but it's a challenge that we are willing to take. We are already on this challenge actively. And as Mark explained earlier as well, we have devised certain strategies in terms of the way that we contract, in terms of the way that we undertake certain activities in parallel, and so on. So we have the mechanisms already that we are putting in place also throughout this year for the construction strategy and supply strategy to tackle these issues. Of course, it remains a big challenge, but as I say, we are willing to take this challenge and give our best as always.
And Mark, on the same question, what are some of the tools in our acceleration toolbox that allows to accelerate project delivery without sacrificing the value or the quality?
So if you look at it as a single project, then yeah, it does look quite daunting to do it in the time we've got. But you've got to remember this isn't one single organisation delivering it. We've got delivery organisations in each country delivering their different elements. Then we've got RB Rail providing coordination between them. So I agree, if it was just one single entity trying to deliver this, it would be a very daunting task. But we're a team working together, delivering different elements. And then we're looking at ways to de-risk the overall delivery, which is why we're considering things like some of the centralised material procurements. So one area we identified was a potential risk was just sourcing the volume of ballast we need for 1,000 kilometres of railway. So rather than leaving each individual track installation organisation to try and find ballast, we're ensuring that there's enough for everybody. We can centrally source it so it doesn't delay the installation of any of the work. So that's part of our role as RB Rail, is to look at the overall project risks to allow the individual implementing bodies to actually deliver on time. And I can see no difficulties that we can't overcome on this project. It is deliverable. It definitely is.
Agni, are you satisfied with the pace of project delivery in the 3 countries, and what are the main issues, risks?
Considering the current situation, I would say that we actually have delivered more than expected, because detailed technical designs are ongoing in all countries. And we are strongly preparing for the construction phase and putting all the procurement standards and, of course, construction plan in place. So I think that we will be ready for the construction as planned in the next year. Of course, the challenges will be always, because this project is a mega project and something that has never been done in the Baltic countries. So if you can imagine any challenge or risks, then most likely it's there. But the question is not about whether we have them. The question is how do we deal with them on a daily basis. And this is actually where the dedicated team and organizational structures and decision-making and planning comes in place.
Mark, based on your very extensive international experience, how would you characterize some of the issues and risks that we are facing, on top of the previous discussion about the timeline and budgets?
So this project has got elements that I've seen on projects elsewhere in the world. I don't think there's anything unique on this project that hasn't been solved somewhere else. Maybe it's a different combination of the elements. Cross-border railways are always a difficult challenge in that you have to make sure that you comply with legislation in different geographies. You can manage the cross-border elements. So that brings an interesting twist. But we've got very good cooperation between the different countries involved in this project. So I don't think there's anything there that's insurmountable. The timeline definitely is aggressive, but it won't be the fastest railway ever built. They have been faster construction projects than this, so I don't see that as a insurmountable challenge. I say that there's nothing really on this project that is more difficult than anywhere else. This is a deliverable railway, and it will be achieved.
Excellent. Kristjan, what is the time frame for procurement of railway turnouts for the Riga railway station? I think we can expand this also further, railway turnouts also for the main line. And when the tender is planned, and what's the expected delivery time? And please kind of also expand on the wider context of turnout procurement for the main line.
Thank you, Kaspars, for this question. Regarding the turnouts, then this is one of the supply items that we are intending to consolidate and procure in a consolidated fashion from the RB Rail side together with the national implementing bodies. And just last week, we have had also supplier meetings with the different suppliers and manufacturers across Europe predominantly. But this is a bigger topic for sure. And the free issue materials is something, and components is something that we are working on at the moment. The plan is to start the procurement exercises of these consolidated components within the second half of this year. Some of them will go into next year, but turnouts are one of the first items that we intend to go forward to procure, especially because of the lead times and the criticality of the quality and the logistics involved there as well. So this is something that we definitely intend to go forward. It's not just a question regarding one particular station, I would say, but it's a question regarding the overall project and the provision of the turnouts for the entire Rail Baltica projects that we are considering here.
Thanks. A question from Kaspars, and I reckon that there were many bets that were made. How many viewers will we have in this first online forum for Rail Baltica? And we can say that we have had up to 500 viewers. So this is roughly commensurate with the number of participants we usually have in our physical forum on each day. And then, probably if we count together all of the participants from today, this will be a bigger number. But at peak, we had 500. So this is perhaps the answer for any of the bets that you have been making. We certainly have, and I don't know who won. Okay, a couple of questions. Let me merge them on Finland. First of all, what is the status with Finland? And are there any news regarding the tunnel connection between Tallinn and Helsinki? It would significantly increase RB value, to which we certainly agree. Agni, you want to take this one and then maybe
I think Finland is and will be a very strategic partner for Rail Baltica, because we cannot underestimate the importance of the northern countries and the transport flows and passenger flows that we are having from there. And currently, Finland has remained as a partner for the Baltica project and remains the previous involvement. And of course, we will work closely with Finland in order to get even closer in this aspect. If we speak about the tunnel itself, I think that this is quite a time ahead for the tunnel to be delivered. But at least currently the discussions are ongoing, and there is a question about the feasibility and the technical aspects, how it could be actually constructed considering the conditions of the Baltic Sea, etc. But anyway, Finland is the close partner of Rail Baltica.
Kristjan, maybe related to the previous question on turnouts, but expanding it, Lauri is interested in how Rail Baltica will procure construction materials. So maybe kind of talking on the one hand about the superstructure components, on the other hand maybe regarding some of the concrete elements, but also some of the subsoil mineral materials. Do you have kind of a message for Lauri and others on that front?
Thank you to Lauri for presenting this quite a topical question as well. It's indeed something that we have been working on how to tackle different procurement elements and how to go forward in ensuring that we do timely and proper procurement of the different components. So when it comes to the substructure materials, especially the embankment materials, then we have undertaken over the past couple of years several studies to understand the quality of the local mineral materials, the quantity and so on, whether these can be applied and whether they are in sufficient quantity to be used for the construction of the embankment. And it seems that the embankment construction material is available locally, and there we do not intend to currently do any bulk purchase of sand, for instance, in that regard, or other embankment materials in that sense. And this will most likely be in the hands of the main contractors to ensure the local supplies, and we will provide this responsibility to the contractors, together with the information from our studies that we have undertaken. If we talk about other components, then ballast, sleepers, rails, these will be coming from abroad, most likely. If we talk about concrete structures, then of course there will be local manufacturing of the concrete structures. And if we talk about standardized structures, then where we can, we will of course support the standardization of various structures if there is benefit to the project. And this information will be coming out as we go on as well with the project. If we talk about the upper structures that considers electrification and other items related to electrification and the command and control systems, then there we are undertaking the engineering services and strategy decisions this year, towards the end of this year and within the first half of next year. So there will be news coming on the procurement of those aspects as well. But if we talk about then briefly on the consolidation of the material purchase, then the consolidated items first and foremost will consider ballast, sleepers, rails, clips and the components in those regards, including turnouts as well, which we mentioned earlier.
Do you have any considerations on this from project or program management point of view? Is this an optimum strategy, to kind of strike a balance between consistent quality and, good economics versus the needs for acceleration?
So there's definitely areas to trade off. I mean, sure, there are some benefits, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best way to go with centralised procurement. Sometimes the additional logistics or the risk of delivery outweighs the benefits of a slight reduction in price. So it's something that we're studying to ensure we come up with the optimum balance of what things are better off being centrally procured and what things are better off to be procured by the individual contractors, so they have better control over timing of deliveries to site and all the other elements to ensure they can deliver. So there's no one size fits all, definitely. It's an area to study.
Right. Mark is
if
asking,
I may add one comment,
go ahead.
Kaspars, do you mind?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. In terms of the consolidated frameworks as well, one item that probably we need to mention is that the consolidated procurement does not mean that we would in advance bulk buy all the materials for the contractors. It could also mean that we provide the frameworks which the contractors can use, not storing a large bulk of material somewhere and buying them and delivering them from the joint venture side itself. So there are options also that we are considering in that regard.
I would just add on this some of the practicalities. Last week we had a wonderful round of initial consultations with 20 different companies covering rail, ballast, sleepers, turnouts and related equipment. We will have also the second round of such consultations. They will focus on concrete elements, on noise walls, fencing, cabling, all of these other additional elements that we require, and we will also continue to discuss with all of the other companies for other components who did not participate. So there was also a question of whether if, because of the pandemic, any company was unable to join these consultations. That certainly in no way limits the possibility to engage with us. Feel free to send information to us. If time will permit, we will be able to also organize individual meetings. But generally, we need the input from the industry again to perfect our technical specifications and to make sure that our procurements, especially for these framework agreements, are as transparent as possible. And one major element, we are learning, and this is quite obvious, that a lot of these components carry a very huge logistics cost and complexity. So something that we are encouraging wherever possible international manufacturers to consider locating their manufacturing capacities here in the Baltic States, because it's not just from the purpose of delivering additional value here, which is also important, and cooperating with local companies, but importantly also to ensure that we have the most streamlined logistics as possible, because there's 900 kilometers of track length, so logistics is a complexity. Mark was asking whether it's possible to view and share the recording of this event later. The answer is yes. Again, both the presentations you saw today, also the recordings will be available, I think, both on our website, on our YouTube channel, in Facebook. So, of course, feel free, and we are very thankful for you for that, to share and multiply these messages to those who could not attend today. One important question, and Agnis, I will give word to you because this is a very strategic issue. Of course, the Madam Commissioner for Transport addressed streamlined governance. I assume this is about kind of project delivery governance. Can you please specify what that will look like and by when?
Indeed, this is a strategic question in one sense, and from other hand, it's a very practical question. Because, as you know, project is going through different phases. There was a design phase, which are currently right now, and we are preparing for the construction. So it means that delivery also evolves to actually to be ready for this phase. And during this year, 3 Baltic countries together with RB Rail and implementing bodies, we are working to make a more effective decision-making mechanism, to make decisions faster and more up to the speed in sense of the construction aspects, and also to include those strategic political decisions which are needed. So the decision on how the organization will enter the construction phase will be made this year, and the practical implementation, whether it will be kind of one organization or several, I would say it's not the main question here. The question is how effectively the decisions at operational level will be taken. So I will say by the end of the year, we will see the improved organizational structure across the project.
And if I could kind of immediately piggyback on a similar question, but referring more to the operational phase, The question is, after commissioning in 2026, who will make maintenance for the Rail Baltica line? Will that be a local infrastructure owner, or, rhetorically, and how it will be financed? I know we don't have a definite answer to this question.
There is no definite answer today.
What is the current status?
But it definitely clear that states are currently working on that in order to set a clear infrastructure manager and also the operations for that. One thing what is very clear is that Rail Baltica is a one line. It's not 3 different lines or something like that. So it's a one unified line which have to be organized and run jointly. And that means that first of all, what is important that from the client side, this is a one-stop shop. It doesn't matter whether you enter in Lithuania, Latvia, or Estonia. The requirements are the same, and there is a different ways how to achieve it. I think that let's follow how the states are working on that one, and within next year or 2, we will definitely see the results in most effective way, what's actually could be agreed.
Kristjan, I know you covered quite a bit of that in your presentation, but can you kindly also confirm and also provide further instructions regarding the availability of our procurement plan on our website? So there's a question whether such tendering schedule is available.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. We have a procurement plan available on our website. So if you go to our website, then there is a procurement tab. And under that, you can see the procurement list 2020, which is the procurement plan effectively, including also the implementing bodies activities in there. Now, I know that there was a question I spotted earlier about also where to find information on who we contract with and who our suppliers are. And under this procurement page as well, if you go to tenders, there are all our active tenders going on at the moment. And at the same page, there is a possibility to select the archive option. And if you go into the archive, you can see the reports there and the tender opening summaries and so on, which gives you a good idea of who the suppliers are that have participated in our tenders. So if you're looking for this information, please do also look at this tenders page where we have a lot of information available. And also this provides you with a good overview of how we undertake tenders, what kind of information we publish, how transparent we are, how precise we are with the documents and so on. So I think this gives a lot of useful information. Please feel free to browse that and read through. If we talk about, again, on the procurement plan topic, then we are planning to update this procurement plan also in Q2. So there will be an updated procurement plan coming out over the next month or 2 as well.
Thank you, Kristjan. Let me address the 2 questions on the signaling and comms system. One is whether we are planning to equip 1,000 kilometers over 3 countries with a single signaling system manufacturer. If not, what will be Rail Baltica's strategy on that? And when exactly the procurement tendering for signaling communication scope will start? Many thanks and kind regards from Germany. Thanks. I'll just quickly say a few words, and then please, colleagues, feel free to add to that. We currently have a command control signaling strategy study ongoing. We are working together with our Danish international partner Ramboll. They are currently at inception report stage, and this study will address precisely these issues. What should be our strategy from the technical point of view, and what would be the procurement strategy? Clearly, there is, again, a trade-off on a range of different options, from a turnkey provider across the entire infrastructure, or maybe more scattered components, perhaps off-the-shelf components by several providers. But what is very important and undeniable, that certainly there will be one ERTMS and hopefully one communications system across the entire infrastructure. But whether or not we will go for one or several suppliers will be determined in this study. So if any interested company has interesting insights or recommendations for Rail Baltica on this, now is the time to engage with us as the joint venture, with the Ramboll team working together with us, because of course that will help us define what way we go. Anyone wants to add on this? Perhaps Mark, having seen deployments elsewhere?
Just to add, I mentioned in my presentation about the importance of the connection into Poland and onto Warsaw as part of the overall project. And the signalling is one element where we're already starting discussions with our friends at POK about how we can look at ensuring we've got proper integration. And from a procurement point of view, is there an option there around sort of doing a joint procurement for the cross-border element? So we shouldn't forget that the signalling system is a continuous system along the whole railway, not just the element in the Baltics. And that's another element we're looking at, because they'll be installing ERTMS level 2 on the section in Poland as well.
Absolutely. Marko Järvelä is asking, and Agni, maybe you can tackle this one. How is the design of Rail Baltica taking into account the need to promote the provision of local rail services in the future and adding new stations? So with regard to that regional connectivity, what is your vision?
Regional connectivity is always, it's part of the project already. Because when you plan the alignment in all three Baltic countries, you on one hand plan that it disrupts the inhabitant and nature as less as possible. From other hand, it provides as much opportunities as you can. So if we speak about Rail Baltic, it's not only about the cargo trains and international trains. It's about regional connectivity. It's about cities amongst the line between all three countries. And this is a question about operations, train operations. How much will you have international trains and how much you will have regional trains? And there's also Kaspars tackled that we are looking at three main infrastructure, multimodal terminals. But at the same time, we are very keen that at all three Baltic countries, we are joining the logistics centers and access points to the railway as much as possible in order to bring the business case. So this is not a question about the connectivity only between Tallinn or Vilnius, but it's a question about the connectivity on all line between those main cities.
Mark, do you want to add something on that regional connectivity and how kind of a mega project zooms into the more local context, maybe outside of the bigger cities that we'll see international stations? How do we promote, transit-oriented development also out there, outside of the bigger cities in the Baltics and beyond?
So I guess one thing I didn't really mention when I was describing the scope, as well as the international stations, as we've already mentioned, there is also a plan to look at doing regional stations in the future going forward. So this is part of our planning. And then obviously there are many opportunities for development around these regional stations. So in addition to the more traditional transit-oriented development you would see at the big stations in the main towns, we are looking at opportunities for regional development and ensuring that these are considered in the planning of the railway, both in terms of the layout of the track, ensuring there are sections of straight track so that we can build future regional stations along the entire alignment needed and where the development opportunities are going forward. We're talking about the initial build of Rail Baltica in the presentation today, but to me I see this as just the initial phase. This will be a project that will carry on growing in years to come, and there will be further developments, further additions to it. We've talked already about the potential connection to Finland in the future. This is the start of something even bigger, even though it's a massive project right now.
More comment just from the practical side. If you're looking for these regional stations, currently it's planned more than 30 stations, regional ones on the line, on top of those international stations. And of course, what is important also that we deliver those regional stations at the same time when we are completing the project. It's mean 2026 that full line, including regional stations, are fully operational.
Thanks. The time is running out, so maybe a couple of final questions. There are two questions on innovation. I will try to combine those. Before that, I would like to respond to Alan Tue on the question regarding the telecom technologies planned for the project, FRMCS, GSMR. Clearly, we are monitoring the development of FRMCS. We are engaging closely with the USC, with the European Rail Agency, with ERTMS user group, all of these critical stakeholders to understand in our project timeline by the time we have to commit to a particular communication standard, whether we can, which of the systems we choose. And of course, from a long-term innovation point of view, I already mentioned that Rail Baltica needs to be smart and future-proof. So hopefully that also defines our choice of strategy, also assuming that this technology, the new technology, next generation, develops in a timely fashion. On innovation, and Kristjan, perhaps I can ask your input on this one. This is also regarding how the project is open to technology, SMEs and startups. How can they work directly with us? And maybe you can share some of the procurement mechanisms, as we develop this kind of digital or stakeholder platform, a mini innovation cluster, so to speak. How does that work from the procurement point of view? And also maybe you could allude to the use of drones for linear monitoring during the construction phase.
Thank you, Kaspars. Quite a few questions there. I would maybe ping the strictly innovation topics back to you as the main guardian of our innovation for the project. But if we talk about the involvement of SMEs, then definitely it's a question on either direct contracts or subcontracts. And from our perspective, we see that local contractors and local companies, including SMEs, will be involved in this project in any case, even if not as direct contractors, then as subcontractors. And we see this already taking place in the design stage. We see that we have local design subcontractors, survey subcontractors, and so on. And this is because the project needs both the international expertise and knowledge and capabilities that relate to the ability to design and construct such a high-speed railway, including the innovations that are being applied already maybe elsewhere in the world that are not yet existent in the Baltic States. But on the other hand, there is a need to understand the local market, the local legislation, the construction law locally, and how to apply these requirements and different technologies safely on the railway. So there is definitely a possibility to have a mix, and I would very much encourage a symbiotic relationship with these international companies together with the local companies that know the local circumstances and the way that all the business environment and construction work locally, where the innovation eventually has to come in. We are, as you know, Kaspars, as well, communicating constantly through the various channels with different companies, be they innovation providers, be they designers, be they survey companies, and so on. And we provide the feedback as much as we can. We provide also the information on where to turn to for opportunities and so on. And we are, of course, also already considering future possible platforms on how to further incentivize this communication amongst the marketplace, whether we can have some additional platforms established to really push for even more communication and wider involvement of the various companies from various places in the world. But I would like to also ping this back to you in relation with the innovation topics as well. I think this is more a question to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we'll certainly be happy to take them up maybe at the later stage as the time is running out. But of course, innovation, as you already saw in some of our presentations, is a critical pillar for Rail Baltica development. There were quite a few questions on rolling stock, and just as a reminder that technically this is not part of the Rail Baltica current scope, but of course when it comes to projecting future rolling stock characteristics and requirements in our operational planning and in our planning for the facilities and functionalities, including maintenance facilities or rolling stock depots, of course we project and analyze the different requirements. But we are not in the business of procuring the rolling stock, and that probably will take place somewhere at a later stage. And maybe one final question that I will direct to Agnis. and this is a very important one, and in many ways summarizing our discussion today. How will balance be found, either to focus on life cycle and future, or just build something that's fast for short-term cost reason and ignoring the future?
We cannot ignore the future because future is not ignoring us. So this is the challenge from the planning and from design phase, to have this balance between speed of the delivery of the project and the quality of the project. And currently we speak about 2026, and it's an aim, but it's not an aim at any cost. If we will lose the quality or the future of the project, it's not worth it. So there will be a balance between the quality and between the effectiveness of current actions.
Fantastic. Just quickly responding to George Raymond's question about the shadow operator, whether that will cover also logistics and intermodal operator. Yes, I mean, as part of the wider shadow operator package, also terminals and accessibility and functionality of those terminals will be assessed on a global project basis, zooming into these particular facilities from a single shadow operator perspective. And then maybe the last comment to mention comes from our friend Per Korshammer, who says that Rail Baltica project is the best project in Europe, fast, effective, cross-border project. Congratulations to Rail Baltica team. So I, of course, also extend that congratulations back to the community. We would be nothing without your help and partnership. So I thank my colleagues for a very fruitful Q&A. Apologies for some of the few questions we didn't respond. Please relay those to us maybe by email. Reach out to us if they are pertinent, and we will make sure to respond to those. But I think we covered quite a bit of ground today. So thank you, colleagues.